Good morning, we're here at IBC 2012 in the Connected World BPL broadcast, and I'm delighted to say we have with us Steve Canepa, the Global Media and Entertainment General Manager for IBM. Steve, good morning.
Good to be here.
Welcome. A phenomenal show this year. How are you finding things?
Lots of energy. It's really exciting. You know, our stand was quite busy all day yesterday. I walked the floor a little bit to see a few of the other stands, and there is a sense of, I think, energy in the market right now.
Absolutely. So I'm delighted that you can actually join us here in the Connected World specifically. As you know, our focus in this part of the show is very much around the consumer experience and perspective, and trying to really work within the industry to get that understanding of how the consumers see things, but from the way that we as the industry need to adapt and change and integrate. Tell me about how IBM are looking at that and making that work, particularly here at IBC this year.
Yeah, it's clearly a central theme for IBC and what's happening in the media and entertainment industry. Interesting enough, though, it also aligns directly. We just did a CEO study where we analyzed discussions we had with CEOs all over the globe, over 2,500 CEOs, and we talked to them about what's really driving their business, and the whole connected theme was a big part of it. How do they connect with their customers? How do they make sure they're connected with their employees? And we see that, of course, right here in media and entertainment. In fact, some of the work we've done, which I believe you're aware of, around analyzing what we call the digital consumer, is really quite powerful. I think we've actually exited an era of digital, where everyone was talking about we moved from analog content to digital content to really a new era of the digital connected consumer, and what that means. What we think that means is with that two-way connection over all kinds of different devices, broadcasters have to do much more than just lift and shift their content into new channels. They really have to connect in a very compelling way with consumers, specifically around what they're interested in. So new notions of kind of behavioral segmentation, moving beyond just age segmentation, and really getting at the core of how does value get created. I like to talk about innovation at the moment of consumption.
Okay.
How do we give a compelling experience to each and every consumer on the device they're on in the way that they want to consume the content?
Absolutely. There's a lot of complexity in the market, and there's a lot of bewilderment, I'm sure, in terms of consumers trying to understand how they buy and consume their content. How are you managing to actually educate from the business side around the issues that we as broadcasters and vendors, systems integrators, pull that together to really educate that this is about what the consumer is driving?
Well, in some ways, the market has an interesting way of driving success, and those business models and those companies that are connecting better with consumers are naturally succeeding in this role. It's really hard not to see how powerful some of the new models are, whether on mobile devices or on tablet computers, and see how consumers are embracing those as they go. Some of the projects that we do around the world give us a chance to actually test and demonstrate some of those capabilities. We're just doing the US Open this last week for the tennis in the US. We do Wimbledon just a little bit earlier in London. And the opportunity to put live data in with the programming. So not only does the consumer become their own programmer in the sense that they can pick the channel they want, the court they want in the case of tennis, but they can drill into the information in the way they want to. They can pick and choose which pieces of information are of most value to them, and then go as far as they want to go with that. In some ways, I think of it as creating an infinite number of experiences with a finite amount of data.
Yeah.
And so you'll hear about us talk about smarter media, and what we mean by smarter media is just that, the ability to take your content and make it even more compelling for your audience.
How does that go to the next level in terms of the monetization of that? So you have this data, you have this intelligence, and are able to understand the consumer, the viewer, in terms of content, additional information. How do you then turn that into a monetization advertising model for the broadcasters or other people involved in the production side?
Technology is playing such a wonderful role in this transformation. It allows us to do things that we couldn't do before. So part of our focus over the last few years is really to bring automation to the industry, workflow transformation. And in that, the ability to drive down unit costs of production and distribution, make new business models possible. So if broadcasters can get the content to the consumer in a more efficient manner, streamlined, time to value is shortened, and so there is the opportunity to then monetize, to make some profit off of that content. To me, the next step then is thinking about how we put that data element to it, how we make it more intelligent. So we're looking at data analytics now in ways that we can make more efficient those workflows, so resources get used more efficiently. And secondly, to really sense what the audiences want. And I'll give you an example. In the US, we're working on a major project right now with a cable operator where we've taken the DVR, the recording device that sits in your home, and put it into the cloud.
Okay.
And we're actually ingesting upwards of a petabyte of content now every single day for those consumers. But when they play it back, not only are they playing back the content they want at the time they want it, but we can add intelligence on top of that so that they can do spot insertion and get ads that have more applicability to that specific consumer. Once you have this kind of open standards-based technology in the middle of your workflow, your ability to add specialized capabilities, your ability to understand in much more nuanced detail what a consumer really wants, how they behave, gives you the opportunity to then give them back the value that they're looking for.
Excellent. So you're looking at not just the efficiencies within the business and across the workflow, but how you're able to increase the speed and accuracy of that information and data into the cloud and still understand the consumer experience, behavior, and drive the customer analytics and intelligence behind that towards monetization.
Absolutely.
Sounds like the golden goose.
We did a major project earlier in the year, which was really interesting. This new area of being able to analyze unstructured data. So the whole social blog. One of the things that is really changing is consumers aren't just consuming on those mobile devices and tablets, they're actually producing content as well. They do it every day. They blog, they use Twitter, they put posts out, and as they're doing that, they're publishing information into the open web. Analyzing that human language information gives a lot of insight into what consumers really think about brands, about products. We did a project where we analyzed 1 billion tweets and then 5 million blogs and posts, and then 12,000 tweets a second during the Super Bowl. And we were looking at some of the trailers that were being held for upcoming films during the Super Bowl. And it was amazing because not only we could see the intent to go see the movie and how well the trailers were actually performing, so if you talk about monetization, but we could understand what consumers really thought about the films, what characters they liked, what storylines they liked, how they were being marketed. This kind of new feedback loop for customers, it's like having a focus group the size of the web.
Absolutely.
So we see a tremendous opportunity in exploiting data, understanding more about your audience, understanding more about your content, and then also understanding how you put those two together in the most efficient manner. That's a big focus of what we're doing.
So we're here in Europe at the IBC show in Amsterdam right now, but how important is it in North America in terms of the changes that are happening? Is there a big difference between North America and Europe in terms of the receptiveness of broadcasters to actually use that information and additional intelligence that you're able to provide?
Yeah, one of the things we did in our Beyond Digital study, which by the way is available on our website at IBM.com, we actually did consumer surveying of consumers in 6 major markets around the globe, including the United States. And what's interesting is each market, there's a little bit different flavor on how they're adopting different devices and what rate and pace. And India is a perfect example where mobile is absolutely the dominant new vehicle for communications. But I think the thing that was most interesting that came out of the latest study wasn't so much the rate and pace of adoption, because for the most part, in most of the services we looked at, whether it was video on demand or voice chat or etc., they've all reached a certain level of saturation in the marketplace, almost all above 50% adoption rates. But what's interesting is some of the demographics that are driving the adoption now aren't what you would have expected. It's not necessarily just the 18 to 24-year-olds that are driving new services. In fact, in some cases, we're seeing very different demographics. So that was one of the key findings. The other thing that I'm seeing happening, especially here in Europe right now, in fact, we'll be announcing at the show a couple brand new projects that we've been working on. Canal Plus is one of them, where we help them digitize their entire value chain. So we're seeing European broadcasters really embrace this new agile workflow so that they can serve their different channels. And in fact, in Germany, we're working with WDR. They're going to put 500,000 elements on a new digital archive. We believe it will be the biggest digital archive in all of Europe, or at least in Germany. And so there's some really exciting changes. The more content is digital, the more it's available. And then with the power of these new devices, I think the optimization that we can do in getting the right content to the right consumer provides a lot of opportunity.
What do you think is the biggest challenge to broadcasters, particularly in terms of entering this new era of the connected consumer. Do you think there's a lot of debate here at the show and the conferences around, is this the death of television as we know it? It's all becoming about the second screen or about devices. Now, I'm not sure that's entirely true, but what do you think as an industry to broadcasters is the biggest challenge we face?
Well, in fact, we published a paper a few years ago called The End of Television as We Know It, and I think as we know it is the important part of that phrase.
Exactly, yeah.
It is changing, and in fact it's changing at an ever-increasing rate. So for me, it's not so much a matter of is the market changing, of course it is. But the big question is, are broadcasters ready to take advantage of that change? And I think the only way they can is to have a workflow that is automated so that they can be agile and they can move quickly. I like to say the only thing for sure in the media industry anymore is it'll be different tomorrow morning.
Or this afternoon.
Or this afternoon even. So you have to be agile. And you have to be able to figure out how you're going to reach that consumer better. You know, one of the things that we've seen in each of the segments of the industry, whether it was the music segment or the publishing segment or even the gaming segment now, is going through dramatic change. Each of these segments of the industry are going through different flavors of change, and one of the common denominators is if you can connect directly with that customer or that consumer and understand what they're looking for, to understand how they behave. In fact, consumers behave differently on different devices. So if you're in tune with that and you can begin to identify those trends and predict those needs for consumers, I think you're in good position going forward.
Absolutely. I think that's probably the most articulate description of the connected world, and in fact the whole issues that are facing the industry as a whole in terms of how we actually connect and engage with a customer, and whether that works for the broadcaster commercially, creatively for the customer, and across multiple platforms and devices. Steve, thank you very much for your time.
That's great.
Appreciate it.
Good to be here, as always.
Enjoy the rest of the show,
Thank
and we'll see you at NAB.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you.